Hello and welcome to this Marvel Snap deck video. I've wanted to bring you a deck video for a while now, finally got around to making one. I am of course going to be starting off with the best Pool 1 deck in my opinion, which is Kazoo. So let's talk about this deck. This deck is built around the idea that you're going to put a lot of things on the table and you're going to buff them with Kazoo that has ongoing, your 1-cost cards have +1 power, and Blue Marvel, which says ongoing, your other cards have +1 power. So the idea behind this deck is you're going to flood the board as hard as you possibly can. Then you're going to get big buffs with Kazoo and Blue Marvel. We're also going to have Onslaught for Pool 1. Onslaught doubles your other ongoing effects at the location. This means that you can put him down with Blue Marvel or Kazoo or both to get huge buffs to your entire board. Now, we're going to be talking about a Pool 1, a Pool 2, and arguably a Pool 3 version of this deck. The Pool 3 version often is quite similar to the Pool 2. So let's talk about why the Zoo deck is so good. In Marvel Snap, you effectively have access to 3 resources throughout a game. You're going to have cards, which you're going to get 9 of in a normal game of Snap. You're going to have energy, which you're going to get 21 of in a normal game of Snap. And you're going to get space, which you're going to get 12 of in a normal game of Snap. Obviously, there's a lot of locations that can affect these things, but generally speaking, you're looking at 9 cards, 21 energy, 12 space. This deck is excellent at using all of those resources. You get to play all of your cards out a lot of the time. The Strong Guy version does that better than the Onslaught version. We'll talk about that in a second. You get to use all of your energy pretty much every game, because you're going to get to weave in those 1-drops when you're missing out. Like when you have a Kazoo on turn 5 that you draw, you can play Kazoo plus a 1. And you're going to use all of your space because you play a lot of cards. You've got Squirrel Girl that puts 3 guys on the board. Sometimes you're going to have Multiple Man that puts 2. Carnage is going to help you with those space limitations sometimes, but pretty much you're always going to use all of your resources, which is what makes Zoo such a good deck. But let's now talk about the Pool 1 deck. Alright, so the main idea behind the deck is those cards, Kazoo, Blue Marvel, and Onslaught. There is going to be another version I show you with Strong Guy instead of Onslaught. That deck's going to look a little bit different, but let's first talk about this Carnage version, which is the version I personally liked the most when I was in Pool 1. I played this a lot. I think Carnage is a super sweet card, and I think Nova, just giving you that extra buff across the board, is really, really useful. So this is the version I liked the most in Pool 1. So let's talk about the 1-drops. There are, of course, quite a few different 1-drops you can play in Pool 1. All of them are pretty reasonable. It's kind of hard to go wrong. I would say maybe Angel is the worst, but it's kind of hard to go wrong with 1-drops in this deck, because the idea of the deck is just to put 1-drops on the table and then buff them up. So I think the absolute best 1-drop you can have is Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl puts a 1-power, 1-cost card in each other lane, which means that you get 3 1/1s, which are going to get buffed by Kazoo and Blue Marvel. That means these things are going to be 3/3s if you have a Kazoo and a Blue Marvel out. With an Onslaught, you can be getting 4/4s or 5/5s. This is basically Squirrel Hulk. Like, you're going to be getting like 15 power across the board with a Squirrel Girl if you set it up right. That's ridiculous. This card is absolutely insane in this deck. This is the best 1-drop in the deck for sure. The next best is, of course, Ant-Man. Ant-Man, you're going to fill up lanes very easily. Ant-Man is a 1/4, just great rates. Other 1-drops that are good, Nightcrawler is just a really good 1-drop early in the game. The movability is going to be very clutch on a lot of different locations, so Nightcrawler is just great. And then, of course, we have Nova in here to be eaten by Carnage for another buff. If you don't end up eating him, it's not that big a deal, because you are buffing your 1-drops so much. He's still going to end up being a big guy. But if you do eat him, then, of course, you're going to buff your whole team, which is great. I also have in here Hawkeye. Hawkeye, again, just good rates. He's a 1/3. You can play him turn 1. Turn 2, you play another card on top of him. You have a 1/3. That's just very good rates for the deck. And Rocket Raccoon is going to be a 1/4. If you guess correctly, you're going to have a 1/4, which again is just very big rates. So really, you're just playing the 1-drops that have the most power or utility. So we've got power in Ant-Man, Hawkeye, Squirrel Girl, and Rocket Raccoon, and utility in Nightcrawler and Nova. Now, you might be asking yourself, why am I not playing Blade, which is, of course, actually one of the biggest 1-drops, and a 1/3. The reason for this is that in Pool 1, you're just going to want to play your cards out without worrying about what your opponent is doing. There's very little interaction in Pool 1. You're not going to have to worry about Killmonger, which arrives in Pool 2 and is the absolute best counter to this deck. So you don't want to play Blade early and accidentally discard one of your key pieces like Kazoo, Blue Marvel, Onslaught, etc. Let's talk about the other cards in the deck. So the other cards that aren't 1-drops, we've got Angela. Angela is just one of the best cards in the game. As you play more, you'll realize this very quickly. You put Angela on empty lane on turn 2. You're going to put more stuff on top of her. She's going to end up as a 2/7. If you play Nightcrawler on top of her, then move him. You can get another card there, make her a 2/9. That's just insane. Like, she's absolutely huge. So Angela is just one of the best cards in the game. She's going to be a staple in all of our Zoo decks. And then we've got Ironheart. Ironheart is a 3/6, effectively, giving 3 other cards plus 2 power. Because we're going to be playing our cards early with this deck, you're going to easily have multiple cards on the board for Ironheart, so you're always going to get that 6 power, or almost always going to get that 6 power. So yeah, Ironheart, great choice. If you don't want to play the Ironheart, the other version I was playing originally did have Mr. Sinister in that spot. Mr. Sinister gives you 2 guys, which is great for Blue Marvel. It also gives you 2 guys, which is great for Carnage eating them. He doesn't actually up the power at all, but it clears space, which is very much at a premium in this deck because you play so many cards. Alright, let's talk about the other version of Pool 1 Zoo. This is the Strong Guy Pool 1 Zoo. So the difference here is we cut that Onslaught because he's too expensive. We're putting in Strong Guy now. Strong Guy is going to be a 4/4. If your hand is empty, +6. You're going to be looking to empty your hand at the end of the game every time with Strong Guy. This also means we now bring in Blade, which helps you empty your hand by discarding a card, but you don't want to play Blade until right at the end of the game because you don't want to discard a key piece. Sometimes you'll be able to play Blade when your hand isn't very good, but generally speaking, you want to hold Blade to trigger that Strong Guy on the last turn. This deck also now has Bishop instead of Ironheart. This again is because of the fact that because we're Strong Guying now, we're going to be playing cards later in the game instead of earlier. We're going to hold a few cards to try and trigger this guy at the end. So Bishop gets +1 for each card you play. So on the last turn when we play a bunch of cards, Bishop is going to get a bunch of buffs. So he's going to end up as like a 3/5, 3/6, 3/7. He's going to be a big boy by the end of the game for sure. The ideal dream curve with this deck is anything on 1, probably Hawkeye or Korg are your best turn 1 plays, into turn 2 Angela, turn 3 Bishop, turn 4 Strong Guy or Kazoo, turn 5 Blue Marvel, turn 6 the other 4-drop, plus dumping all of your 1s out of your hand. This is going to turn the Strong Guy on, and once he's active, he's going to be absolutely massive. Okay, now let's talk about the Pool 2 Kazoo deck. This is where your arch nemesis, Killmonger, is going to start showing up. Killmonger on reveal, destroy all cards that cost 1. This guy absolutely wrecks this deck. This deck is the best deck in Pool 1, but once people hit Pool 2 and get Killmonger, they're going to start playing him in every deck because they're going to be so sick of seeing Zoo in Pool 1 because it's just the best. So we're going to need to make a few adjustments to our deck based on the fact that Killmonger now exists. First of all, we're going to put in Sunspot and Iceman. Sunspot is one of the best 1-drops in the game. He's a 1/1, but he grows for unspent energy. A lot of the time in Marvel Snap, you're not going to be able to use all of your energy every single turn. So this guy is going to end up growing. It gets value out of that unused energy. Just a fantastic 1-drop. You'll see this guy in a ton of decks because he's just one of the better 1-drops in Marvel Snap. We're also going to put Iceman in here. Iceman is again a fantastic 1-drop. You're going to see Iceman all the time once you hit Pool 2. The on reveal, give a random cost in your opponent's hand +1 cost. It's difficult to know when Iceman has wrecked your opponents because obviously you won't necessarily see them. A lot of the time they just won't play that card for the entire game because of the +1 cost makes it too bad. But if you've ever been hit by an Iceman, once you start getting hit by Iceman, you'll understand the pain of this card. So this is also a fantastic card that you can play out early. The Pool 2 deck, you don't want to play your cards out just on the board like you do with the Pool 1 deck. You don't just slam all your 1-drops because now you have to play around Killmonger, which means we're saving our 1-drops until late game to try and dodge that Killmonger. So Iceman and Sunspot give you nice turn 1 plays that you can happily play out without worrying too much. Nightcrawler, also a good turn 1 play because he moves around, he has that flexibility. The other 1-drops, you're not going to want to play them. Even if you don't have a play that turn, if your hand is, say, Ant-Man, Squirrel Girl, Rocket Raccoon, Blade, just don't play anything. Just wait, it's fine. You'll be able to empty your hand later, and you don't want to give them a target for that Killmonger early on. We're also going to be adding in the armor. You can see we've cut the Nova and the Carnage, because now we're looking to protect ourselves rather than destroy. So we've now added armor in. Cards at this location can't be destroyed. This is obviously a fantastic card in this deck once Killmonger shows up, because it means you have a safe lane to start playing cards into, which lets you be much more mana efficient without worrying too much about that Killmonger. You also can curve Sunspot into armor. People are always going to try and kill your Sunspot, so protecting it with armor early is very, very nice. But once again, like all Zoo decks, you're really looking to Dream Curve of 1-drop into Angela, into Bishop, into Kazaa, into Blue Marvel, into a bunch of 1-drops on turn 6. A lot of the time you won't necessarily have priority either, because your opponent is going to be playing more stuff to the board than you. This is going to let you dodge Killmonger on turn 6. If you play out all your 1-drops on turn 6 and your opponent has Killmonger, it doesn't matter if they flip first. If they flip first, they cannot hit your guys. So that's generally how you're going to play Kazaa, Blue Marvel in Pool 2. The deck is still great, it still really works, but you do have to play around your opponent now having the ability to Killmonger you. As long as you make appropriate adjustments to your gameplay, you'll still do great with this deck. It's still a fantastic deck. Okay, so in between recording the initial video and final edit, I did find this new deck. This Copycat told me to play this one, and it actually turned out to be really good. It started out as a meme. We're putting Quinjet and Moon Girl into the Kazaa deck, so that the idea is you copy a bunch of 1s with the Moon Girl, and then with the Quinjet, they're all going to cost 0, which gives you a Serra-esque final turn, where you're playing out like 6 cards and a ton of power to the board. Like I say, it started out as a meme, thought it was going to be really bad, but actually it turned out to be incredibly good, so I decided to include it in this video. This is now my pick for the best pool-free version of Kazoo. My win rate with this deck has been absolutely insane. It's been like 65 to 70%, which is bonkers in pool-free with a Zoo deck. I think it's absolutely crazy. So I wanted to talk to you about this deck as well. So what we've done with this deck, we've taken out the Squirrel Girl, which might seem insane, but actually you fill up the board so often that Squirrel Girl just has no space. She just comes down, she's just a 1-1. I mean, obviously she gets buffed by Kazaa and Blue Marvel, so she isn't often a 1-1, but there's way better options now. You use so much space in this deck. Squirrel Girl actually did not make the cut. So we've taken out the Squirrel Girl, we've replaced her with Agent 13 and Quinjet. We've also taken out the Iceman. The reason for this is that the Iceman was an early play. You wanted to play the Iceman down on one of the first few turns. That's one of the reasons he was good in the deck before. You would have something you could drop early when you weren't holding it for the last turn against Killmonger. Now we've got Quinjet that needs to come out early, and Agent 13 that you want to put down early. So Iceman and Squirrel Girl are out. Quinjet, Agent 13 are in. We now have Sunspot, Agent, Quinjet that are easy early plays on turn 1. You do need to actually play a few 1-drops early with this deck, because you don't want to be sitting there with a massive hand when Moon Girl comes out, because then you'll only copy a few cards. You only copy from left to right, and you have a maximum hand size of 7. So it's quite important to keep your hand small enough that Moon Girl is going to copy things you actually want her to copy. And then additionally, we've taken out the armor. Again, Killmonger is a problem, but having a single armored lane doesn't really save you most of the time, and you just can't afford an extra 2-drop in this deck. Like, now that we're Moon Girling, you need your cards to be really cheap. You want to have a bunch of 0s on the last turn. You don't want to be paying 1 or 2. We're still Dream Curving Angela into Bishop, into either Moon Girl or Kazaa, into Blue Marvel or Kazaa if you went Moon Girl on 4, potentially. The other thing this deck does is, because you have Moon Girl to copy, the Moon Girl can give you a second copy of Kazaa or Blue Marvel, so even if you miss drawing one of them, as long as you draw the other one plus Moon Girl, you still get 2 of those buffers out. So yeah, this deck has actually been surprisingly great. I thought it was going to be a meme, but yeah, like I say, been playing it, been absolutely dominating with it. So I wanted to show you a little bit of this pool-free version of what we're calling Kazoo Jet Girl. There's been many names for this deck, they're all silly, but I'm going with Kazoo Jet Girl. And I wanted to show you a game with this as well at the end of the video, because it only contains Quinjet from Pool 3, so very easy to transition into this one, and I think, honestly, still competitive. I'm at rank 165 right now, and I'm still 65-70% win rate with this deck. So absolutely you should try this out if you're looking for a Zoo deck in Pool 3. Alright, so here we go. We're going to be playing the Pool 1 deck. We'll just play it as though it is Pool 1, obviously, because this is how you guys are going to be experiencing it. So we're going to just drop a Rocket Raccoon over there on the left. We do have the Angela on 2, which is the ideal 2-drop. We get a Central Park. This could be a problem. It could hurt our space quite a lot. We do have the Carnage, though, to make space again. This is one of the reasons I really like the Carnage in this deck. Space can become a problem with locations that restrict space. Carnage helps you a lot in those situations. We're going to get the Angela out on 2. We're going to hold the Carnage for now. Potentially, we want to wait until we draw a Nova for this Carnage. And then our final location, we've got Kunlun. There is the Nova, exactly what we wanted to see. So we're going to play out this Nova, and we're going to play out our Squirrel Girl. We're going to hold the Carnage for now. This is going to... Sorry, the Squirrel Girl should go middle to trigger the Angela. This is going to seriously restrict our space, especially on the left. But we do have the Blue Marvel to buff. And we're going to Carnage to kill quite a lot of these things, which will, of course, grow our Carnage and give everything a big buff on the left. Opponent has Sif, discarded Hulk, means they're probably playing a Hela deck. Hela returns all cards that were discarded to your into play. So we're going to Carnage here, and we're going to Hawkeye. I think we're going to Hawkeye on the left. The reason for this is that we have the Bifrost. So what happens is Hawk will reveal, and then we'll need to play in the Bifrost to trigger Hawkeye. So this stuff's all going to move across. This lane's going to be full with Carnage, Angela, Squirrel, Squirrel Girl. This lane's going to be full with Rocket Raccoon, Squirrel, Squirrel, Hawkeye. But then as long as we play the Blue Marvel on the left, the Hawkeye is still going to get buffed. And with this Nova, we're going to get a ton of buffs here. So as you can see, the Nova, massive buffs. Gives us a lot of power across the board. There goes the Hawkeye trigger. Opponent plays Jubilee, and they're going to hit Moon Knight, discarding our Blue Marvel. Wow, that is a beating. That is pretty painful. We did need that Blue Marvel. As long as we draw Kazoo, we should be okay. As long as we draw Kazoo in the game. The Kunlun does buff all of our things as well when the Bifrost moves in there. So we do have an amazing amount of power in Kunlun. There is the Kazoo. That is the absolute best thing we could have drawn here. Very happy to see Kazoo show up. We are going to slam him on the Bifrost. And then hopefully our best draw is, of course, Onslaught next turn to trigger that Kazoo again. We're going to have to wait and see what Tommy does and see if we draw that Onslaught. We have a few bad draws in the deck, but we have the Ironheart in there as well. Ironheart would be a good draw. So this is looking pretty good for me. It's just a Sunspot that grows. Looks like we're in great shape. We only drew Nightcrawler, which is a little underwhelming, but with 25, 14, we're going to 7. It's going to be, even if he plays the Hela, it's going to be tough for him to hit anything in Kunlun that wins. He also can't grow the Sunspot anymore if he plays the Hela. And there it is, opponent retreats. So there you go, there's the power of the Zoo deck. Even in pool 3, this Zoo deck still just puts massive points on the board. Alright, so now we're going to be taking a look at the Strong Guy version of the deck. Here we've cut the kill package, added in another 1-drop, and we put in that Strong Guy. We, of course, now have Blade to help us empty our hand on turn 6. We are, again, going to start out with Hawkeye on turn 1. Hawkeye he's just good rates. He's a 1-3 in this deck, because you're almost always going to be able to play something on 2 on top of him. Very unlikely that you cannot do that, given the deck is full of 1-drops. We're going to put the Ant-Man down here to trigger our Hawkeye. Also gets Ant-Man on the board. And we're going to Raccoon into the Lab. The Raccoon's ability will go off before the Lab ability. So if our opponent plays here, we're going to end up with an 8-power Rocket Raccoon. Alright, so opponent didn't play there. No big deal. We still get a 4-power Rocket Raccoon in the middle. The Shuri's Lab, of course, not great for our deck. Our deck plays a lot of small guys, so this trigger does not do a lot for us. And our third location is Bifrost again. No surprises there. Bifrost is the featured location currently. So we do actually have the curve of Kazoo into Blue Marvel. The Squirrel Girl we're going to hold. There's no real reason to play the Squirrel Girl. We're going to go Kazoo into Marvel. So we're going to just wait here. There's no real needs to play out another card. So opponent has got a Mr. Sinister. That's pretty good. That's going to go up to 6 and a 3. Now let's see what we draw here. Oh, we've got the Nexus. The Nexus, of course, a very powerful location. So there is the Strong Guy. I think it's better to play the Kazoo. He's a better, more important part of the package. If we draw those 1-drops, we can still get the Strong Guy out. This guy is always going to do what he does. This guy might not, so it's better to get the Kazoo on 4. The opponent's also played 2 cards into the Lab. Let's see, we've got a Carnage eating the Mr. Sinisters. This is okay, because it goes to 6, then gets doubled, but he did eat like 9 power, so it's a little unusual. And then Bifrost is going to happen. Goose does nothing against us, because most of our cards are cheap anyway. So we should be able to play into that lane, no problem. Squirrel Girl will also jam a one power into there. All right, so we drew the Blade. This is a really good draw. The Blade means that we will guaranteed be able to empty our hand for the strong guy. So we are, of course, going to want to get that blue Marvel out now. We're going to want to play everything else that we draw onto the Nexus. Potentially we'll try and trigger this Ant-Man, but really we need to get as much power into the Nexus as possible. Opponent has played Sarah. Sarah makes all your cards cost one fewer. This card is extremely powerful. This is basically the pool-free version of Zoo. Alright, so we are going to play Strong Guy and Blade and Squirrel Girl. The Squirrel Girl does not need to go in the Nexus, but there's no value, it looks like, to playing it anywhere else. We just really need to put everything into the Nexus. Hope that our Strong Guy being big is enough to win the game. Let's find out. Sarah puts a lot of points on the table at the end of the game, but we're going to also put a lot of points. This guy's going to be an 11. This guy's going to be a 5. This guy's going to be a 3. So we're putting 16, 19 more power into the Nexus. We're going to go to 22 power in the Nexus on the final turn. That's pretty good. Let's see if our opponent can defeat that. Alright, so opponents also put 3 cards next. We've got a Bishop, a Nova, and a Shang-Chi that doesn't hit anything. I think this is ours. We're going to put a lot more power in the Nexus, which usually makes you win the game. Here we go. Strong Guy's going to grow. There's the Squirrel Girl. Massive power. Look at these points across the table. Nexus, of course, going into the other lanes gives our locations a lot more power than you'd expect. But this is why the Strong Guy version is so strong. This is why you play Blade. This is what makes Strong Guy so insane. Look at that 4-11 on the board. Opponent couldn't even come close to competing with that. So this is why the Strong Guy variant is so good. Alright, so now we're going to be playing the Pool 2 version of Killmonger. Pool 2 version of Zoo, apologies. Need to play around that Killmonger. So we do have Sunspot in the deck. This is one of our things we can play early in the game. We also have the curve of Sunspot into armor to protect it. This is pretty nice for us because it allows us to also play more 1-drops without feeling too worried about that Killmonger. We're going to put the Sunspot middle. The Shuri's Lab buff is pretty underwhelming on the Sunspot. I think I'd like to save this space for later. Okay, so we got Luke's bar, so we actually can't play the armor into that. I think we're going to put the armor... Let's put the armor in the lab so that we can dump our 1-drops there later. That is the ideal curve. We get that 2 into 3 into 4. We have been hit by Scorpion, which is super painful, but it's okay. Our guys are still going to be big as long as we draw those buffers. And our opponent is getting Murder Worlded, so that's nice as well. So I'm thinking about whether I play this. I think I have to play the Bishop on the left. Alright, so we get our Bishop. The 0 gets doubled to 0. Feels good, man. His Scorpion gets killed. Let's see what we draw. Hopefully we draw Kazoo. There it is. That is Kazoo. That is our absolute best draw here. I think we'll put the Kazoo in the Murder World. I would like to save the Shuri's Lab power for a little bit later in the game. Here comes a Debris, but actually these rocks are going to get buffed by our Kazoo, so it's not even that bad. Ideally, we draw Blue Marvel now. We have drawn Squirrel Girl. So I think we want the ability to play Blue Marvel if we draw it next turn, which I think means we do need to play some things out. So we're going to put Iceman here, and I think we're going to put Ant-Man here. We're going to save these two. We don't want to play the Squirrel Girl because it takes too much space. We don't want to play the Blade because we don't want to discard the Squirrel Girl. We also do want to grow our Sunspot so that we win Luke's bar. So I think this is absolutely fine to save 2 energy here. We're also, I mean, we're only 25% to draw the Blue Marvel anyway. It is, of course, our best draw, but it's by no means a guarantee. Alright, so as you can see, our Shuri's Lab is getting reasonably big. We drew Rocket Raccoon. So Rocket Raccoon is absolutely the best thing we can put here. Our opponent is pretty likely to play something here also. And then our Rocket Raccoon will become a 4, doubled to an 8. So this is going to be a 1-8, and then it's going to get 1 from Kazoo to be a 1-9. So we're going to do that. We're going to Blade over here. And then I think we just Squirrel Girl in the middle. The Blade is slightly more power than the Squirrel Girl. We won't get extra Squirrel value, because obviously the Debris filled up our lanes with rocks. But we're going to grow Sunspot again. Let's find out if it's enough. We should win Luke's bar because of this Sunspot. So then we just need to sneak one other lane. We're also going to get a bunch more power from... We're going to get like 3 more power from the Bishop because we're playing 3 cards this turn. So we're going to go up quite a bit in Shuri's Lab. And we're going to go up enough in Murder World to win it if he doesn't have anything. Alright, so there it is. Angela Daredevil. That is not going to be enough. Rocket Raccoon is going to win us Shuri's Lab. Sunspot's going to win us Luke's bar. Easy wins for the Zoo deck. We actually might even win Murder World. No, not quite. It's close, though. We're, like, pretty close to winning Murder World as well. And there it is. Pool 2 or 3 Zoo deck. This is a very similar list. I actually play exactly this list in Pool 3. Once you get to, like, turn 4, 3 or 4 in a game, you should know if your opponent is a Killmonger deck. Because they'll be playing their own cards, like Hood and Nova and Bucky Barnes. Those decks are all going to have Killmonger. So a lot of the time you'll know if they're a Killmonger deck, and you can assess whether or not you want to Carnage away some of your 1-drops, or try and avoid having priority on the last turn so that you can dodge that Killmonger. Alright, so we are going to be taking that Moon Jet Girl deck for a spin here. We do have an excellent curve to start out with. Of course, this is post-patch, so our Angela is now a 2-0. Despite that, I would still play Angela in all of these decks. Angela is still the best 2-drop you can play. So we've got Quinjet, we've got we've got Angela, we've got Bishop. We have the Kazoo and the Blue Marvel. Ideally, we draw a Moon Girl to let us copy these things with the Quinjet. There goes the Kazoo. That's a shame, but as long as we draw the Moon Girl to copy this Blue Marvel, we will be fine. We'll still have 2 buffers that we can put onto the table. We're going to curve our Angela into our Bishop. Opponent has 4. We've got a Rocket Raccoon. We're going to hold the cards here. We don't need to play any of these. We are waiting for a Moon Girl, ideally. Opponent has a Wong. We did see them discard their White Tiger, though. Sunspot we could play out here. We do have turn 7 in this game. So I think we will play out the Sunspot and simply grow it. We'll keep waiting and hope we draw Moon Girl on 6. Alright, so he has the Jane Foster. That means the hammer's going to trigger twice. He's going to get plus 12 to this lane. We did not draw, unfortunately, the Moon Girl. So we're going to play Nightcrawler onto the Angela, and we're going to get our Blue Marvel into play now. We'll put that on the Angela as well for the extra buff. We'll see what our opponent does with turn 6. Alright, we've got Angela into Storm. Don't care about that. And there is the Mjolnir to buff 4 twice. So final turn, we have our 1-drops. We need 11 power to win on the left. All of our cards are going to get buffed by 1. I think the left is a no-go. I think that one's done for. We assume he's going to play another card into the Wong, so the Rocket Raccoon goes there. Flooding, we're winning by more. I think Blade here, Ant-Man here. We'll grow the Sunspot by 4, but it won't matter. It won't beat the 4. Let's see if this is going to be enough. Opponent plays 2 cards. What's it going to be? That is going to give us that Rocket Raccoon buff. There's the Blade. We're up big power on the middle. 24. Ironheart comes down with Wong. Is it going to be enough? Doesn't win him the flooding. Morph hits nothing. So our hand is empty. And there it is. Kazoo Jet Girl taking down Wong Mjolnir. No problem. Absolutely love this version of the deck. It's super fun. Unfortunately, we didn't get the Moon Girl there, but imagine if we had hit the Moon Girl at any point. We would have had another Rocket Raccoon, another Ant-Man, another Blue Marvel, another Blade. These things would have cost 0. The Blue Marvel would have cost 4. We actually had enough energy on the last turn to play all of these cards again. And as you can see, the space limitations are real. This deck really struggles with space, which is why that Squirrel Girl is no longer in here. Alright, so there it is, guys. Pool 1 with Carnage and Nova, which is actually my personal favorite. Pool 2 with Pool 1 with Strong Guy, the alternate variant. Also an absolutely fantastic deck. And Pool 2 with Armor. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Zoo is a competitive deck throughout the entire game. There is no point, I'd say, at which Zoo actually becomes really bad. Once you unlock Serra, which, for those of you who don't know, is a 5/5 that reduces the cost of cards in your hand by 1. This basically replaces the Zoo deck. Once you unlock Serra, you start playing Serra Miracle instead, which plays a bunch of 2-drops that become 1-drops with Serra. But if you don't, until you unlock Serra, the Zoo deck is an absolutely perfectly reasonable deck. You can play this version of Zoo here, the Pool 2 version, all the way through Pool 3, and it's still going to work out. You are going to struggle a little bit with Killmongers, but not everyone's going to have Killmonger, and sometimes you can play around the Killmonger as well. So anyway, there you go, guys. Zoo deck, absolutely fantastic. If you enjoyed this Zoo deck spotlight, please like and subscribe, and consider hitting that comment as well. Let me know if you want more of these. Let me know what else you'd prefer, if you want a different style of video. And thanks for stopping by, guys. I'll see you all at the next one.